plan for this episode is to create a sprawling single-family home district, reaching from our downtown transition zone right the way up to our university site. But we're going to have a problem: demand, or more specifically the lack of it. This is becoming a big city, and it's one that I've tried to keep as functional as possible. Plopping down every building in the city frankly would result in a bit of a ghost town, and I've got no interest in plopping several hundred houses either. So today we'll be expanding our city grid, plugging it into the existing road network, and we'll attempt to try and tackle those demand issues. If we're successful, then we can try and make it look good. So the area that we're going to be working on today is pretty clear from this view. We've got two really large plots of land, and it's going to make one sort of big super district. Now this video was never really meant to be a video. I said last week that I was planning on doing a live stream, and I was planning on doing this build live on Twitch. I had myself sat down in front of the computer, I had the thumbnail ready for YouTube because we stream live on both platforms, and loaded up the city and realised I'm just not going to be able to stream it. My PC just can't handle this city and streaming, unfortunately. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't think this PC can handle this city full stop. I can run a similar sized city on vanilla without too many issues. The sim rate's not too bad, and the frame rate's acceptable, certainly playable. But I think by the end of this episode, I'm going to be left with a city that is just really crawling to a halt. There's going to be time to get the credit card out and get some upgrades, and the main thing is getting a new CPU. I've got an Intel 13600KF, which is okay, but it's a couple of years old now. It wasn't the greatest CPU in the world when I bought it, but it was pretty good value for money, but I think it's had its day. But it will require a new motherboard. It's going to require some new RAM as well, going from DDR4 to DDR5. So, an expensive upgrade, but it is helped by you guys. Patreon money and the YouTube membership money is going towards this. The account was drained out, it's now in a bank account, and I am ready to make some purchases. So a big thanks to everybody who sort of chips in each month and helps with that. It does have a direct impact on the channel and my ability to make the content, so a big thank you to you guys. I'm making a few changes around the membership options, both on Patreon and YouTube on the channel. You might have noticed that there was a members first option there on the last video, and I'm trying to mirror the benefits on Patreon and YouTube, so it's just a way of giving the YouTube members early access to the videos as well as Patreon. You know, they get them at the same time. Patreon's still the best value. You still get access to some updates as I'm working on things, as well as the game saves, which is probably the main difference between the two options. But I will be making some exclusive videos, members only videos for Patreon and YouTube. They both get access to it just exactly the same, so keep an eye out for that. If you are interested, obviously links are in the description, do check them out. The other thing that's in the description is a link to Piccana.net. On there you'll see my full PC spec, so whenever I talk about PC stuff, people always ask for the spec, so check out links on there, and yeah, you can have a look at the current PC as things stand. Obviously I'll keep you guys up to date and let you know what I end up with. So we got our grid system in place. We really just extended the same grid system that we have in our medium density area to the south. We did of course have some arterial roads that we had to deal with. They are splitting up the different districts, so really we've just used the snapping tools and just try and line things up a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's not far off. I actually did a pretty reasonable job in terms of not messing up the zoning on here. I think we've got things looking pretty good. Again, not perfect, but we're going to be adding a bit of vegetation and trees. It doesn't have to be perfect, and we can kind of hide those little imperfections. Quite straightforward to do. Now I did follow a really simple road hierarchy. We're just simply using single lane roads throughout here, and then we're just cutting through them with some 4-lane divided roads. Where that road intersects with our highway entrance or our highway exit, I've created a bit of a junction. Just use move it to move the nodes back a little bit, and really just make it a bit more imposing, I guess, for any pedestrians attempting to cross it. Obviously, as you see there, we've created some of our pedestrian walkways. I think that's going to be pretty important. I don't really want people crossing that major 6-lane road and really blocking access on and off the highway as well. My plan is to split these areas in two really, and create little sort of community hubs around schools essentially. So we're going to kind of break up the grid a little bit. I do want to keep things intact best I can, however, so I am going to try and fit the assets in there if it's possible. And to get things moving with the zoning and save an enormous amount of time messing about with paths and all that kind of stuff, we're going to use the advanced road tool mod. Absolutely invaluable here. Essentially what we're able to do is you're able to control the zoning on the roads. You might or might not have seen me use that before, but super invaluable, and this would have taken so much longer without it. So using the tool is simple. You simply just click the road and you'll see that the zoning changes as you go along and click each section. So without using that mod, it would look like a bit of a mess. The roads, or the buildings rather, just come in and zone on any of the roads. So doing it this way, we can get things looking nice and uniform and exactly like what you would see in a big grid in a city. Super simple stuff, and the nice thing about having it so tightly gridded and tightly zoned is that we don't have to do much detailing either. Chuck a few trees on, we're pretty much good to go. A bit of contrast to all of this low residential, suburbia is going to be the creation of a little office park. We've got an awkward little spot here. It's wedged right in between the interchange, the highway, and the railway, and some big arterial roads as well. And I think perhaps if you are living in that area, if it was going to be houses, it wouldn't exactly be the nicest place to live. It's going to give us a nice point of reference in the build, and it's going to provide a bit of contrast to the rest of the buildings that we're putting in today. I mentioned earlier I was looking to get a little bit of a community hub on both sides of that highway exit, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use the medical stuff. I think the demand is usually pretty strong for healthcare in the city, and we're going to bank that up by adding a little bit of a school behind it as well. And that's one of the smaller high schools, and it fits in that block really nicely. Couldn't quite squeeze in the running track, unfortunately, so we'll break up another block and we'll stick that in. And while we're at it, I think it will pay to get a little bit of a park in there as well. Final thing I want to do is just add a little post office. It's probably something I haven't added a huge amount of in the city. I think when I checked the demand or the coverage on it last, it was just about teetering on the edge, so it's not going to do us any harm by chucking in a little bit of extra capacity there and having it slap bang in the middle of the neighbourhood. Perhaps we're maybe adding some opportunities for employment as well. So things are looking like they are coming together, and I reckon it's time to get some more zoning in. The one thing I want to keep mindful of is basically connecting these different neighbourhoods together. I think it's really easy, especially when we have a big physical barrier like a railway or a highway, is to kind of forget that people actually need to get from A to B, and it will kind of cut down on the traffic obviously in the area as well. So when we have the opportunities, we'll add these little paths here and there. This footage has been speeded up x 100. Hopefully by the end of it, we'll have our neighbourhood. So swinging quickly back over to that little compact office park. Again, I'm going to just use zoning on this one as well. There's no massive benefit with these office parks, quite honestly, to plopping them down either. So we'll see what grows in, and we can take an adjustment from there. Now, one thing I would say is that in terms of the detailing on that one, again, it's going to be super simple with the zoning stuff. We're just going to add some vegetation, but we are going to add some surfaces. We're going to detail it just ever so slightly different. Now, obviously you can see that I zoned that as high density office, and we don't want big skyscrapers here. That is not going to look good. We want to keep it nice and low level and try and keep things in fitting with the surroundings. So we've let the simulation run for a fairly long time, and as you can see, we've pretty much stalled on the zoning. We've got one or two things coming in, but that's pretty much it, done and dusted. So what I wanted to do is kind of dig in and try and find some reasons as to why that's the case and what we can do about it. First point of call was having a look at happiness. It's looking okay. We've got reliable mail, wealth, plenty of entertainment, walking distance to school, reliable healthcare, plenty of leisure time, some service upgrades, and we've got reliable internet service there as well. Only +1 on reliable internet, and I know that I've seen that being plenty higher in previous episodes. I'm using Brucey Boy's info loom to try and glean as much information as I can. We've got the demand graph here, or demand table up here, and it's showing plenty of empty properties, so that's definitely a concern and something we need to have a look at. I want to have a look and see how we're doing in terms of employment, and this table basically breaks everything down for you. We've only got 575 positions, so unemployment isn't an issue. In a city this size, it's going to be 1 or 2% realistically. So taxation, fine, they're all natural, we're neutral rather, 10%, and budget wise we're looking okay. I know that everything's set at 100% on the budget. Don't need to look at transportation. That's going to be something that we're going to look at a little bit later on in the series, but for today that's not the case. Worth having a look at electricity, worth having a look at water, just in case there's something obvious there. And our healthcare and our death care is looking fine. Now I say that we have a huge death wave on the go, but it says we have capacity. Well, time to go pick up the dead bodies then, I think, isn't it? Now, I hide them icons because they flash incessantly and it's not that good looking when you're trying to watch a video, but I've not got around to having a look at the hearse mod that was suggested in the comments the other day. I will be doing that, but today is not the day. The other obvious place to look at, I think, is the police and fire coverage, and we're looking fine on all of that. It's really good coverage all around. Prison, we don't have any prisoners, unfortunately. We did have one once, I guess they escaped, or or maybe they paid their debt to society, but yeah, nobody in the prison yet, which is a shame. We get capacity for plenty of them. One really interesting info view that we don't have good coverage on though is welfare coverage, and this is something that I have spent precisely 0 time looking at before. So given that the coverage is that bad, I think that this is something that we should probably investigate and see if we can try and improve in the city. It could potentially be a hidden factor that is preventing demand. Having a quick look over at the schools, looking fine, capacity's good. Elementary, we are just teetering on the edge, so obviously we have added some extra elementary schools and we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Mail services overall are looking good, but we do have some red buildings, which means that their service is not good. They are accumulating mail. I think capacity-wise, we are just about okay, but yeah, we're trying to get some extra capacity in the mail system as well. Telecom stuff, as you can see here, is not great either. It's kind of teetering towards bad coverage, and again, going to be capacity issues here. I think we've got scope to really bump that up. Be interesting to see what they give us on the old happiness scale once we improve on that as well, but that again could be a real factor that's holding back the city growth. The land values is one of these things that I'm not really entirely sure how we can bump it up. I always thought that you could just add some parks and the land value would raise, but I did have a play about with it a bit later on, and nothing that did really actually made much of a difference. So if any of you guys have got any suggestions with land value on how you improve it in your city, drop them in the comments. I am curious to hear what you guys do about it, if anything. And just for curiosity's sake, I'm going to have a little scan through the rest of them and see how we're doing on it. Household wealth, that's something I've never looked at, I'll be honest, before. Interesting having a look at workplace availability. I wish we had the colour scheme of that in the land value one. It's super hard to see what's high or what's low land value. It's all blue and it's not clear at all, I must admit. Pollution wise, we're looking okay, not too bad, and I think we're going to get a couple of people complaining. We are right up against some industry in one of the new neighbourhoods, so yeah, we might have a few complaints a little bit later on. So to summarise then, what we're going to focus on then is telecoms coverage, the mail system and the welfare system. We're going to kick things off with telecoms, and we're just going to use the really large aerials here. Now you can get better coverage if you place these things higher, i.e. on top of a hill. We don't have any development on the other side of that mountain, in the crater, so not really too bothered about that. Just going to slot them in there and see what difference it makes, and not very much. So I think we're going to need multiples of these. Let's get cracking, let's get them added. So just pick a few spots, really just where we have industry more than anything else. I think it makes sense. Don't really want them in a low density neighbourhood, that's for sure. And I don't necessarily want them slap bang in the city as well. So where we have little pockets of industry is pretty much what I'm looking for, or perhaps a patch that doesn't have any development on it at all. I think up here on this hill though is a nice spot, and we have the infrastructure in place to hook it up pretty easily as well. So we'll grab our slope tool and we'll pop this in. So we can see, even with the addition of just a handful, we've got a pretty big swathe of the city that's gone green. But obviously you can see that there is quite a bit still to do here. So let's pick a few more spots, and I reckon just here beside the big postal sorting facility should be a pretty good idea. Certainly in the UK you'll find a lot of telecom stuff beside post office assets. Used to be part of the old GPO, General Post Office, and of course that's split up to Post Office and BT. So I think it's pretty fitting to have a big telecoms tower right beside the sorting office. Let's have a quick peek and we'll see if that made any difference. Yeah, it's looking a little bit better now, but I reckon we still have scope to get a bit more green. So let's get a few more down. Over on the island that hosts our F1 circuit, I think I will use the elevation on this one. I reckon that's a prime spot up at the up at the top of the hill, so let's get one up here just now. Now this should give us coverage in every direction given its elevation here. So let's get ourselves zoomed out and have a little look, and yeah, that's looking a bit more like it, isn't it? I think we've got a little bit of coverage issue there on the yard, you know, the downtown area. So I think we've got scope for maybe a little one down here. I think it'd probably be a good shout. Don't want too many of the big ones beside each other, but I think a little radio mast and whatnot beside the telecoms one, that should help. Alright, perfect, lovely. So I think that's all of the downtown, really all the medium and the high density sorted. Obviously we look over here in the industrial area that's still crying out for a bit of love and a bit of attention. I keep kicking that can down the road. Look at the state of the decals on that as well. That's not at all how they went down. But anyway, I digress. Let's try and get some communication sorted out for them. So I think just a simple road off the back of the recycling centre will do fine. In a remote-ish area, and they'll do the job for now. This needs sorted. This needs moved as well. But anyway, jobs for another day. So with that round of upgrades done and dusted, time to visit demand, and doesn't look like it had any impact at all, truth be told. I think that is looking pretty much exactly the same. Of course, we've got plenty of zone there, nothing was coming in, and there's no movement there on our demand bar either. If we check out the happiness, it looks like our reliable internet service has gone up from +1 to +4. But yeah, I mean, we'll take it. It's better than not going up at all, I guess, isn't it? And there's still time to slot on a little bit more as well, just in case. I think a little bit extra capacity in our busy downtown is probably going to be worth it. So just a case of figuring out exactly where I can slot this building, and I can't quite bring it to myself to actually delete stuff that's popped down already. So like what I'd rather do is just find the right spot, and we'll just give it a bit of an overlap. And these empty commercial buildings, I think that looks pretty good. Colour wise looks okay, and it's working on ground level as well. So next service that we're going to work on is going to be improving the mail service. Now the mail service is pretty good already, but as we saw earlier on with the table or the infograph, I can't remember which one it was, we are just running out of demand. So I think what we're going to be doing is just add a couple of different post offices, and this Eastern European one fits the bill really nicely. It's a pretty good fit with the rest of the kind of blocky services. I think that's a big Chinese library across the road, and we've got a few big apartment blocks across the road there as well. So all that's left to do really is just add that capacity, and I am just going to spam our new neighbourhood with plenty of post boxes. Now I am going to just extend that right across the city, and really if there's anywhere that's quite obviously needing a post box, then we're going to add it. We may as well. So this tends to be the kind of thing that I start and then I forget, and then I remember about 5 months later on. So while it's fresh in my mind, let's just get it added and it's a job done. So after that round of upgrades, really not much doing. We do have a slightly smaller figure with empty properties and residential, but nothing really major in terms of movement there. Happiness is looking good. Unemployment, as we say, is still low. Tax rate, neutral. We don't have a homeless problem either. So yeah, a bit more to do, I think, to get things moving. I'm going to get cracked on with the last of the city services, and that is the welfare offices. As I said earlier on, I've not looked at this at all, to be honest. At any point since I've started playing the game, I kind of forgot that it was even a thing, apart from maybe using some of the assets because they look nice. But I think here, popping it there just beside that university building, that is pretty much going to be the start of, I think, a modern campus, I think, for university. I think I'd like to extend it out there, and I think it looked pretty good. It was, of course, a terrible placement for a welfare office. We've got it beside one of the welfare buildings there already, just to the left hand side. So really the coverage is absolutely abysmal where I've placed it. It's nowhere near any houses, so we're going to have to place a few more, but I'm going to keep that asset there because I like the look of it, and it's going to give me a little reminder to build that out on a later episode. So the Japan welfare office is much smaller, and I think that's going to make a really good fit right beside our school, and it will be part of our community hub essentially for our new neighbourhood. And we can see here that, yeah, it pretty much covers most of the new buildings that we're going to be putting in this episode. When we drag it over the downtown here in the higher density areas, I know that I'm going to struggle to fit it in. The buildings are not that small, you know, they're pretty sizable. And you know, it's a full city block basically, or slightly more than the city block in that regard. So I'm going to dot a few of them around here and there. I'll just remove the buildings if I have to, but I might have to do something a little bit different for downtown because I really don't want to change the skyline and change the tall buildings. That said, I did get lucky here over at the kind of Japanese inspired Central Station district that we have here. Notice that we could just slot one in there in the shore. I think all the trees and all that sort of stuff kind of covers it quite nicely. I would have loved to kind of got a green roof there to go with the rest of the low density buildings that we have down here. I think that would have been a nicer fit, but recolouring option just wasn't there for us, unfortunately. Didn't change the roof. Now let's just get rid of some of these trees and then we can actually see the thing. And quite nice asset that actually looks more like a UK crematorium. So I reckon if any of you guys are doing UK builds, that is your Piccana. So as I said there earlier, bit of an issue just with the size of these buildings really. They are pretty large. What I decided to do was to use some of StarQ's new zoning blocks. Here I'm going to use one of the welfare blocks, and I'm randomly going to put it in a car park by mistake. Didn't mean to do that, and it's not letting me delete it, but I'll maybe come back and sort that out later on. We'll crack on. So I'm just going to pick a few random buildings and just slot them in where I think it fits. So don't want them sticking out in the middle of the street. We'll just find somewhere to hide them basically. I think maybe one in the stadium might be a good shout. As I said, I'm not really too bothered where they go as long as I just can't see the thing, and hopefully we can get a pretty decent coverage by plopping these about the place. Off camera, I've went around the rest of the city as well as the downtown and just give it a real blanket coverage and got those welfare blocks all over the place. So it's made no difference to our demand, none whatsoever. You can see that the number of empty properties there for low, medium, high is exactly the same, unfortunately. So at this point, I was kind of out of ideas, really, to be honest. I thought that improving city services would be going down a treat in the city. Obviously, only the ones that need to be improved. If something's got blanket coverage all in green, then obviously there's not going to be much point upgrading any of those. So at this point, I let things run on a little bit, and really it was static. It didn't make much difference. The city is running super slow. I've got this speeded up, by the way, in case you're wondering why things are moving at a reasonable pace. So yeah, it was time for a break. So after turning the PC off and going away for a bit, when I booted back up, we've got huge demand, which is not at all what I was expecting. When I left it, I had left it for a run, I had left it running for quite a long time, and really there was no movement whatsoever. So I do wonder why, once the game is reset, that these mechanics kind of come into play. Now I have noticed this before to a certain degree. Usually it's a big population drop when I first log in and load up the city rather than a population increase. So yeah, definitely something weird seems to be going on. Now the unfortunate thing with this really kicking in after a reset is that I don't really know what action I took earlier on that's actually made the difference. Is it the telecoms? Is it the mail? Is it the welfare facilities? We don't know. Probably unlikely to be the mail. I think that was looking like pretty good coverage here anyway, but telecoms and welfare combined at least certainly seems to make a substantial difference. The one interesting thing to note is that I did test the rest of the demand just to see exactly how much we got back, you know, with those improvements. So obviously it's filled in this area. As you can see, it's coming together quite nicely. I went and off camera, once I had everything done and dusted, I went and spammed residential, you know, on the far side of the map, and that demand for low-level residential was vast. We managed to get a ton of stuff in without having to make any further adjustments or any other buildings. Now, whether that is down to the services that we've added, kicking in after the reset, or whether there was actually just an issue with demand and it kicked in after the reset regardless of the services. Obviously, we've got no way of finding out. Something's not quite right there. Now, of course, big caveat with this is that this isn't a scientific test. This is just one little run through on a modded city. We do have a ton of mods. Most of them are, you know, visual or decoration mods. I don't really go into the simulation stuff too hard, but yeah, maybe there's something not playing right, or there's maybe an underlying issue. Not too sure. But if you guys have come across this before, let me know in the comments anyway. I'd be interested to see if anybody else is getting this kind of behaviour from the game. So now at least we can breathe a little bit easier, and we know that we are going to get a neighbourhood out of this episode, thank God. It's time now to make it fit into the rest of the city and really spend a little bit of time making it look a little bit more of a natural fit. Now you will notice that I am redoing some of the paths. Originally I had the path running alongside the big arterial road, and I think it was just going to give us too much of a gap. I didn't like the look of it, so rather than that I decided to bring the residential buildings right up to the front and slap bang on the arterial road itself. You do still see that. It might not necessarily be the most pleasant place to live. I think it will be pretty heavy with traffic, but I think from an aesthetic point of view, and certainly when you zoom out of the city a little bit, it does look better when the development is right up to the busy road. That said, I do still want some elements of walkability in the neighbourhood. So where space permits, I'm going to add some walkways to the rear of some of the residential buildings, and I'm also going to make sure that we can get some walkability about the community hubs as well. I think that kind of makes sense. Now on the big arterial roads, there is walkway there, so people can walk on the pavement, and let's try and make it a little bit nicer when they do that. So we'll put some of the mediums in here, medians, yeah. And we're just going to use some of the tree brush to get some of the bigger areas filled in as well. Then at the Parklow interchange, service interchange, I want to have a little bit of a waste ground effect down here, so I'm just going to spam with the brush some of the riverbed decals, and we'll give it some light dusting of vegetation and just a handful of trees, and I think that fits the bill for a bit of wasteland. Now we had that horrible little temporary road going into our rail yard and our industrial build. Time finally to get rid of that. I'm going to make a very compact, simple diamond interchange here, and it is probably a little bit close to that trumpet there just to the back, but there's not an awful lot I can do about that, to be perfectly honest. I can't cut into the rail yard, and it is going to be a little bit of a risky weaving lane there, but I'm sure Sims can cope. I reckon it's probably just a single node that they have for getting into the correct lane, so deal with it, keep an eye on it, see if there's any car accidents. I'm not going to change it. That road tool mod coming in super useful again, so we can actually get rid of the key walls on that side. We'll build the ground up and we'll just have the key walls on the inside, and that looks the part. We'll of course use it again, and we're going to be using key walls simply just to get the barriers on the inside of the highway. And rather than using surfaces, which is what I would usually do to kind of fill these gaps, I am going to use net lanes. The added benefit of net lanes is that it doesn't bleed into the road above. Kind of gives you that kind of weird look, and it bleeds onto the key walls as well. So using net lanes there is a real good idea. There we go. That's looking an awful lot tidier, and it is looking safer, and I am happy with that. Tidy little interchange, that one. We get a few bits and pieces just to finish off here. The gaps by the interchange will be getting filled in with a bit of dirt, a bit of vegetation. That industrial estate, we are going to be, no, industrial estate's an office park, right? We're going to do a little bit of vegetation. We're going to fill some gaps, get rid of a bit of greenery on that one. And then over where our yard is, where we have the big telecoms tower, and we've added a bit of industrial, we want to make sure that kind of fits into the landscape as well. So 1 or 2 minutes, we'll get it finished off, and then we can have a little review and see how things turned out. So now we can spend a minute or two and just enjoy the finished product. What I really want to see is that transition from, suburbia into that sort of higher density area, and I think it's come out looking really, really good. That modest office park there, tucked in between the highway interchange and that big arterial road, looking like a decent fit, filled a gap quite nicely. And as you can see, I've only done the oaks pretty much towards the outside of the development, and then we just filled in most of the grass and all that kind of stuff with concrete and asphalt, and I think it's worked quite nicely. We might have an issue here with some storage. That looks like liquid storage underneath some pylons, so that might be a bit of a fire hazard, but yeah, tidy interchange. This little area is looking much better as well. I'm really happy with that, actually. And then we've got a final couple of views from a couple of different angles, looking at the whole development and really how it fits in. Obviously, taking a little bit of time just filling the gaps between the buildings and the roads definitely helps. And here you see we've taken development right up to the roads, which I think has helped this area too. Now, I don't usually spin around the map quite so much as I have done in this video, but we actually covered quite a lot of ground today. As we were scooting about the map, upgrading different services, maybe something caught your eye you'd like to dive into in a little bit more detail. So check out the playlist below. It's got a full list of all 50 episodes of this series. You should find something else fun to watch.